Welcome back to Open House with Mark Siwiec and Corey James Moran, brought to you by Elysian Homes by Mark Siwiec and Associates in Greater Rochester Real Estate Podcast. Let me get through it. Episode 173.
Oh my God.
Will my voice survive? That's the big question for this episode.
There's going to come a point in time in our relationship, a point in time when it is that we're engaged in this podcast for more than, say, a few months, and you're not going to, because the kids are going to grow older, and you're not going to be sick.
This is true, yeah.
Yeah.
So what, with 3 under 6 at this point?
Right.
Just
throw daycare in there. And
it's a petri dish. It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm on the other side of it, thankfully. I'm feeling better. I sound worse than I feel, so I guess that's
sexy.
positive.
You sound sexy, bud.
It's the rasp, right?
Yeah.
I should talk slower and lower.
Yeah. Bedroom voice.
Maybe Alex can boost the bass on my voice this episode. We've got a lot to get to. The Fed had their announcement, Mark.
Yep.
We thought it might be good. It's not really good. Talk about that.
Well, again, like we keep saying it over and over and over again. Define good in the past, in the economic conditions that have existed the past few years.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll chat about that. And then our special guest, non-real estate related, really.
Well,
to a degree.
There was a tie-in. There's a tie-in, absolutely.
Well, jobs, the tie-in, of course.
Bingo.
We'll chat with Jill Knittel here in a moment. But first, let's get to our numbers. You ready?
Okay.
Anything else to get to before we get to that?
No. Well, actually, by the time this runs, Merry Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
You're not even interested. No, just not interested.
I know my voice can last this long.
Okay, very good. Let's
That's what you got to do. Our update, single-family active listings. Monroe County, 417 last week. 367.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Now we're back to where we should be, right?
Yeah.
6 county region, 742 last week, 677 this week. Under contract and pending was at 889 from Monroe County, now at 848. And then for the 6 county region, 1366 last week, 1276 this week. Everything's really starting to finally slow down. Yep. And I think the news, at least coming out of the Fed announcement, is going to help things slow down pretty dramatically. We
could spend the next 45 minutes on that alone. I mean, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. So the Fed announced yesterday another quarter point cut, which again, if you rewind 6 months ago and we're talking about this, we would imagine it would be great news, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not so much. Rates jumped. It was 6.78 last week for the 30-year. We're at 7.14% right now. And the reason for the panic and the jump in the rate is that the Fed did cut yesterday, but they also amended what they think they're going to do for 2025, and they're now expecting less cuts to happen. So
up until now, everything was looking great over the course of the past few months. A couple of things have gone on. The first thing that's going on, obviously, is that inflation has stalled. We're no longer creeping downward. We're no longer creeping toward the target rate of 2%. So that has caused pause, and you're noticing some of the members of the FOMC, the Federal Open Markets Committee, starting to change the tenor of their voice over the course of the past few weeks. And then you couple that with some of the policies that Donald Trump has run on, specifically immigration, deporting illegal immigrants. Extending the tax credits for the wealthiest of Americans, and most importantly, imposing tariffs on China, on Canada, on Mexico. All these are viewed as being inflationary, and so it causes Chairman Powell yesterday to say, okay, we're going to get one more quarter point cut, but instead of 4 cuts next year, we're only going to have 2. And Wall Street lost their shit.
Well, it seemed like even yesterday's cut was maybe not going to happen. His quote was, "Today was a closer call, but we decided it was the right call." So it wasn't even like a slam dunk they were going to do for December.
I'm almost wondering whether or not he felt compelled to lower the rate by a quarter of a point, because in not doing so would have caused panic.
I'm sure,
World financial markets, really struggling. So the 3 major indices yesterday, obviously, just plummeted. I mean, just like significant losses and all the indices. It could have been perhaps worse if he had not made the cut.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that obviously does change the projection for what is going to happen to rates potentially in 2025. Again, I don't know if we're going to get to that that 5 handle that we were hoping for.
Oh, there's just no way.
No chance now.
There's just no way because, again, of these policies. But then also, and there's a corollary here. And, if we had more time, it's so important, this corollary, that if we had more time, but because we want to get to Jill, who's sitting here very patiently waiting for us. But if we had more time, I think it would be a really interesting conversation to talk about the growing need that I'm seeing on the part of our clients who want to buy or specifically sell in the new year. They probably want to do so sooner rather than later, because if some of Trump's policies do indeed cause inflation to grow or to rise, that's going to cause the 30-year mortgage to rise. But on top of that, what starts to happen, and I've got to be very, very careful here, because this is dispassionately conveyed, but you've got Republican members of Congress who are now calling for an investigation into Liz Cheney and the role that she played in the January 6th insurgents. On top of that, you've got Donald Trump, who is now suing he's starting by suing 2 major newspapers for defamation. And then on top of that, you've got President Elon Musk or Vice President Elon Musk.
Kind of seems like it, right?
What role he's playing.
Yeah.
But 2 days ago, he takes to Twitter and he says, anybody in Congress who is going to vote in favor of this stopgap measure that is going to extend the ability for the U.S. government to operate through March, anybody who is going to vote in favor of that, they're not going to have a job in 2 years, because I'm going to see to it that we're going to campaign against them and knock them out of. He takes to Twitter, and all of a sudden, there's a very strong possibility that tomorrow the U.S. government, the federal government, shuts down at midnight because they're not going to have the necessary votes. So Donald Trump ran once again on chaos, and Americans seem to love chaos. Okay, that's fine, but how is that going to impact real estate?
Yeah.
And it may be important for people who are thinking of buying or selling to do so earlier in the year rather than later, because I just get the sense that...
Well, it gets more uncertain the longer you go out.
The longer this goes on, the greater the uncertainty. So and again, I know that that's not really what we wanted to talk about this early stage of the podcast, but it is so worrisome and so concerning, and it is so important. I thought that I better just throw it right out there.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we will continue to monitor. We will see what happens.
There we go.
That's all we can do. Let's get to our guest, the president and CEO of JK Executive Strategies, Jill Knittel. Jill, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Good to be here.
So let's see, nearly 30 years of experience in the talent acquisition and executive search field. You grew your firm by 500% since 2017. That's impressive.
Thank you.
And then you graduated from Fisher as well. So,
yeah.
So local.
Absolutely.
Did you grow up in Rochester?
No, I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Okay. So did Fisher bring you to Rochester?
Yeah. So I played basketball at Fisher.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And then just stayed. So I've been here over 30 years. So
That's awesome.
I'm here longer than I was in Pennsylvania.
Well, you're one of the stories I would say, at least from 30 years ago, that was kind of the problem, right? We couldn't retain this great talent that we had going to college here, but stuck around, and it's worked out pretty good.
It's worked out pretty good.
And not only have you grown your business and created a successful business, you've also become a part of the fabric of Rochester and the community. And you're involved philanthropically. You do board work. You belong to a few clubs. I mean, like, people in town know you. You're not just some anonymous entity, who's occupying space. So so that's always nice to find ourselves engaged with and friendly with those who are really a part of what's going on here in the area.
Absolutely. And I think I always say that it's our responsibility from a community perspective to be able to give back and to support the not-for-profits and everything that we need to do for our community. Rochester is amazing from that perspective. I mean, the philanthropy we have here, the amazing not-for-profit organizations and the talent that we have in this area
really
is just second to none.
It really is remarkable.
Yeah.
Well, it's tied into our identity. I mean, you think back to
Eastman.
Exactly.
I mean,
Right. And the Gleasons and all these philanthropic families, all that giving that was going on, the Strongs. They really 100 years ago, they created this culture which still exists today. So exciting. So.
But let's get back to you.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about your mission. What sets your firm apart?
Sure. So I started this company in 2017 after being in this industry for as long as I have. And part of my desire was to really create a firm that was such a great place to work that nobody really wanted to leave. So from a culture perspective, typically search firms are highly competitive, both internally and externally. And I've always said we have enough competition outside of these four walls. We don't necessarily need it inside. And so I've been so fortunate because my team, they're very, very good at what they do. I will tell you that I hire for attitude and fire in the belly way more than I hire for experience. I can teach recruiting. I can teach our process. And happy employees make happy clients and customers.
It's give a shit, right?
So,
I mean, that's when you really boil it down. That's what it comes down to. You can't teach that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been so fun. And, we have a very different process that I actually created to really be as transparent as possible when it comes to our clients and them knowing what we're doing when we're not talking to them every day. We have weekly reporting metrics and just a lot that goes into what our search actually is versus just tossing a resume over and hoping somebody gets hired. So that's been really, really great. And the reason that we have, so many repeat clients that come back once we do one search, we tend to get more searches because they understand how we do it and what we do.
It was at that moment that you should have actually turned to me when you said the words repeat clients, because I am a repeat
you are
client.
a repeat client.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Exactly. Our amazing COO, Ed, who we love to talk about all the time, he comes to us as a result. Alex, our amazing engineer who's sitting over here.
In the room,
he comes to us as a result of your efforts.
Yeah.
And Lauren and your team. Yeah, we're big fans.
Well,
big
thank you.
Fans.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
So, yeah. Tell us what's going on. What's going on with employment here in Rochester? Are we creating jobs? Are we growing jobs? Are we losing jobs?
I'll tell you, I have always said that Rochester runs the highs low and the lows high. From an economic perspective, I just feel like we are definitely steady. So when we see significant downturns in the economy, I think we rise above it a little bit. And I think it's the mix of businesses that we have here that really does that. I mean, we do have large corporate headquarters. We have a lot of other smaller companies, tech companies that quite frankly, have come out of the brains that have come out of Kodak and Xerox and Bausch & Lomb. Yeah. So those type of organizations and companies where, the intellectual property that may have initially, not the official intellectual property, but the learnings that came from those organizations have really seeded the experts that we have in other businesses.
So what are you seeing trends of companies that, well, actually, let me go back. Are we creating jobs or are we losing jobs? I mean, yes, we're creating jobs, but what's the net?
I think we're creating jobs in this region, especially, we're very active in the Buffalo market as well. And the tech sector is really seeing Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse as really almost one region, whereas you wouldn't necessarily think of that because we are an hour away, but larger cities are one region, so a lot of that is happening, which we're seeing. We still have, some carryover from COVID. I think that...
when you say carryover from COVID, what do you mean by that?
A lot of people were hired from out-of-town companies to work remotely. Mm-hmm. And so we've lost, like if I think about CPA firms, law firms, financial services firms, a lot of those that probably were the first ones to go remote, and the larger cities that have those type of people and type of firms have hired talent in Rochester sitting in their homes at salaries higher than Rochester would pay, but less than, say, a New York City or a Boston would pay.
Yeah.
So we do have, CPAs, accountants, those type of jobs right now, there's not a ton of talent in the market. And so those jobs are engineering positions.
Interesting.
We're seeing those positions are tough. Construction engineers, project engineers, those type manufacturing engineers. Those are tough to find, and the ones that we're headhunting for consistently.
And so you're bringing these people in from outside of the area.
A lot of them come from outside of the area, and a lot of that, or. We've seen a lot of people come back to Rochester that may have grown up
boomerangs.
here. The boomerangs. So
I'm one.
And I think that once people are are of the point that they want to have a family or they want to be around the grandkids or, their parents and things like that. We're seeing that happen. We just relocated a CEO from California to Buffalo that grew up in Orchard Park, and he just wanted to get back home.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, we're seeing people, come back to the region. And it's also, your team helps us too, Mark. We use you to attract
we are so
people
grateful
who
for the
are.
opportunity.
Well, thank you, because it really helps us sell Rochester. We can sell it, but having your team drive our folks around, even just the hands-on, like taking them to Wegmans and, showing them what this region has to offer is really, really helpful for us, because then when it's time to sell the job, Rochester's already sold.
So many of these organizations, companies that we were working with in the past, they would come to us, and the number of somebody would come, they would interview with a particular organization or business, and they would be offered the job and they would turn it down. Because nobody was showing them what it is. If you're staying at the Hyatt downtown and you're done with your interview, you walk out the door of the Hyatt, you look left, you look right, and you're like, I'm going back in, I'm going to have a drink and get the hell out of here. But there's so much to offer in this community. And so our team loves being able to actually just drive these prospective clients around.
Yeah, it's fantastic for us too.
Well, thank you. Let's go back to AI, because I love AI. Are there particular, you talk about this corridor, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. Is there a particular type of AI that people, that you're seeing is hiring here? Is it technology in general, or is it AI, or is it big data? Tell us.
I think it's technology in general.
Okay.
But I will tell you that I would say Generation Z and those that grew up with a cell phone in their hand have significant leverage over understanding technology and AI over others that are my age. Our team has, we have significantly changed the game when it comes to how we use AI in our office, just from a process perspective, and even seeking candidates, being able to understand kind of, all of the interview process really, really assists us. So I think from a tech perspective, the goal of not losing the talent in this region, because we don't have those tech jobs, that's why we're seeing them all come here. The cost of living here is much lower than it is in the larger cities.
Sure.
So we're seeing that come in. Semiconductor industry, obviously Fairlife coming into Webster. There's a lot going on, and a lot of, I think, that we're going to see in 25 and 26.
Well, I think you were probably headed that way. Tell what is your forecast? What's going on in 25? What's going on in 26?
Yeah. So there's a few things. So there's 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single year, and that will continue through 2029. So when you talk about the war on talent, it's not going to change. Jobs are going to be tough to fill because there's not going to be as many people in the workforce. We can't graduate the kids as quickly as we can that the boomers are retiring. Are the jobs different? Yes. Are the skills different? Yes. But I think it's really, sometimes we have a candidate-driven market. Sometimes we have a company-driven market. I think that it's going to be a candidate-driven market for quite a long time. And what that means is companies that don't run hybrid or aren't flexible. We're seeing candidates say, if I have to show up in an office 5 days a week, I'm not interested in the job.
Wow.
So candidates are saying no. And I think that companies that are looking for everybody to return to the office 5 days a week, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, they have significant hiring challenges right now, because most people have a much more flexible environment than they did before COVID. And I think that people of my generation and the generation above me have to really flex and really understand that you will lose your good people if you don't listen to them and hear them when it comes to what's happening. So I think it's much more driven from a candidate perspective. Economically, I think, all of the changes in the Fed rates and things like that, unemployment is a leading indicator. Unemployment's low.
4.2%.
It's still low.
Yeah.
And, the biggest challenge with staffing firms and search firms like mine is, companies may want people on a contract basis. They may want people for 90 days. There's not people out there sitting that are available to work 90 days.
Yeah, right.
So I think really evolving from a company perspective, okay, is it a contract position? Can you do a job share? Can you be flexible with, all of the things that are coming up? Companies need to listen to their employees.
Yeah.
Really.
When you say candidate-driven market, it kind of brings to mind too the loyalty that exists now with job jumping. Are you seeing that a lot more than we have in the past?
Yeah. Yes.
Or lack thereof loyalty, I guess you could say.
We do see, I think the younger generation jumps jobs a lot more than we did when we were their age, because we were raised by our parents that were typically at one company for a really, really, really long time.
Yeah.
These kids.
Like for a Kodak.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your brother, your sister, your uncle.
Everybody. Yes. And now it's almost like, I've always said, IT professionals tend to change jobs because they want to learn new skills. They want to get new tech skills or something like that to become an expert in something different. And I'm seeing it in the younger generation. They're changing, and it might not be for money. It might be because they're not passionate about what they're doing. It's the soft stuff that my parents would have been like, oh, suck it up, buttercup. Like, sit in your seat and do your job. And they're not doing that now. They're changing jobs. So it's really, really interesting, just generationally, how things are looking.
I find it I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating and frustrating.
Yeah.
A little both, yeah, sure. That's fair.
It is hard.
But one of the things I found in the past few years is not only do you need to offer work from home, but we've got a policy at our office of unlimited personal time off.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also I've seen just because those who are talented are gainfully employed.
Yeah.
If you want to get somebody who's talented, the salaries that you were offering 3, 4, 5 years ago, you've had to raise those salaries.
Yeah, I did the stats last year. We saw an increase in the high end of the salaries that our clients were offering. We ended up offering 11.2% on average over what the high level of the salaries were.
That makes, based on what it is that I'm seeing, that makes.
So it is. It's listening to the employees, finding out what they're looking for, and I think the Wage Transparency Act that was passed last year has really changed the game too, because what that means is that every single job post that goes out there has to have a salary range posted on it. So no longer are companies playing the game to say, what are they currently making and can we offer 5% more so they come here? We can't ask how much they're currently making. It's illegal. So
really, did you know this?
Did not know.
I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah. Huh. So now we have, we're advertising the salary. So when you advertise a salary of say 100 to 110, what will you say you're looking for? 110.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
because that's the top of the salary.
Yes.
So so then it's interesting because we really have to figure out and really coach our clients and coach the candidates to understand where do we meet from an offer perspective and things like that. But that law has really changed the employer's game as well as recruiting firms to be able to represent the candidates and clients in the right way.
It's interesting. Something that came to mind. So we talk about it being a candidate-driven market. We talked about technology that's being brought in. Do you see companies leveraging this technology more and just not replacing these jobs essentially? I mean, what fields?
I love that question.
What fields do you think are or should be kind of alert here? Because if they can't find the people, can they leverage the tech to replace the people?
Right. I don't see that.
Okay.
And to be honest, it's really interesting, and I'm going to completely date myself here, but I started in recruiting not before the internet, but we used to fax resumes. So there was no tech. And all of a sudden, the internet came on and really Monster.com started and things like that. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, recruiting firms are going to go out of business. No, we're not. We're just going to change how we do things.
Sure.
Same thing with AI. And I think same thing with a lot of companies. There still needs to be that human interaction. And I'll tell you, people people understand now what comes out of ChatGPT. Everybody's very, very familiar with it. So we know when we get a resume from ChatGPT. It's very, very clear, very, very evident. And when we get, summaries of experiences written up by candidates, and I'm like, yeah, this is not written by a human. So I think that we're going to see, I think the pendulum is swinging. I think that there's a lot of tech out there. It's like a wild, wild west right now with what sticks and what doesn't. And I do think that the knowledge of AI and systems and processes and being able to tie systems together for efficiency and things like that is really going to be the name of the game for companies. So people that go into companies with those type of skills and understanding how all the inner workings, and even have the critical brain to be able to say, okay, if this system does this and this system does this, why can't we do something in the middle so that they talk to each other and then we don't have to deal with that at all?
And you've described so much of what it is that we're doing right now in the final quarter of the year in preparation for 2025 is just tying all of these different technologies together through APIs.
Yes.
So they're all communicating with each other. Ed was actually just saying, we've got software that manages all the transactions that take place.
Yep.
Okay, great. So you know exactly what the commission is going to be paid.
Yeah.
But then that has to be...
Where's it go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to tie that to QuickBooks, of course.
Yes.
But there's no easy way of doing it. So,
Yes.
So you either go on to Zapier or you have somebody on the team. Thankfully, we got an amazing guy, Tim, who just, I don't know how to do that. And then let me look at 2 minutes later, he's figuring
it out.
Yeah, exactly. So that stuff is so important.
Yeah, we did the same thing with our weekly reporting process that you've gotten the weekly status reports and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we used to do those manually when I first started the company. And we were like, okay, so all of this data is in our applicant tracking system.
Yep.
All of it's in there. How do we find somebody who can program it to get this report out of it? Because everything's there.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is spending a lot of time typing. And so we hired a programmer to be able to come in and do the interface between Bullhorn.
And the interface isn't all that difficult. It's really
Not at all.
You're basically just dumping everything into an Excel spreadsheet. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually fills that form out, and it gives us a couple things we have to do manually, and off they go.
But to your question and to your point.
Yeah.
You're sending that report to me weekly, which I always found invaluable. But then I always received the phone call from Lauren. Here's what's going on. Any questions for me? Any concerns? So just having the technology,
Yes,
in and of itself, is a road to disaster. You need to couple that with the customer service, and there's a corollary to that, which is we're not going to be replaced by technology.
right.
We're the people who don't know how to use technology and harness technology. They're going to be pushed aside. We're going to prevail because we know the latest technology, and we're harnessing that, and we're coupling that with our ability to interact with our clients in a meaningful way.
Yes, absolutely. And where we've seen it, especially for our clients, it is very, very easy to go into a ChatGPT and ask for interview questions for these particular skill competencies. Very, very.
or the interview.
Or the podcast interview.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
those are, they save time, and there's no reason you shouldn't use it.
Right.
It just makes your output more efficient every single day.
Yes.
But what it can't do is do the follow-up question based off what your answer is, because that came to mind. That's the emotional human element
That's
of
the
it.
human element that won't go away.
Yeah.
I mentioned a moment ago real estate.
Yes.
All right, so I know that you don't hire real estate agents, and you probably don't do a lot of hiring for real estate companies.
Yeah.
In your understanding of national employment news, are you getting a sense as to what's going to be going on? Because the National Association of Realtors is saying 10% of all real estate agents are just gone. Others are saying, Jay Teresi just a short while ago was saying 10 to 20% easily gone. Or was it David Dallin? I think it was David.
Yeah.
Either way, do you have any sense as to what's going on with real estate and employment?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I'm hoping it comes back, because we do have a lot of commercial real estate clients. And those have softened significantly, obviously, because of the interest
Lack
rates.
of business space, yeah.
Absolutely. So for us, I'm hoping it does, but I also believe that that it's okay for some softening because the best rise to the top. So when the market tanks in staffing, so let's look at 2008, let's look at 1998, 2001, after 9/11, you look at how many search firms and staffing firms went out of business. A ton of them, because before that it was easy. It looked easy, so
Sounds
everybody jumped in.
I mean, are you talking about the real estate industry in the past 4 years, or are you talking about staffing in 2008?
It's very similar.
Yeah,
Our businesses, Mark, are so similar. Like if you look at what a recruiter does, we're the middle person and the expert between the candidate and the company that's hiring. You are the middle person and the expert between
You're right.
the seller and the buyer. You have to find the buyer. You have to find the seller. We have to find the company. We have to find the candidate. So it's really, really very similar.
There's another, I think, interesting similarity, which is everybody thinks that hiring is easy.
Right. Right.
The reality is, I've made a few phone calls. I've posted, I don't know, I don't even know the name. Indeed, I guess, is a big. And it's like I'm a line cook at McDonald's, but I'm applying for the role of COO. I'm like,
right?
Are you out of your mind?
Right.
And only after you've just banged your head against the wall.
Yeah.
For 3 or 4 weeks, you're like, all right, I can't do this. I got to call in an expert.
Yeah.
And I think there's the same thing happens in real estate. Oh, I can sell my house. I can buy without the use of an agent, et cetera, et cetera. And only when you've actually started to swing from the trapeze, you realize oh shit, I'm falling.
Yes. It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So we got expectations. All these agents are going to leave the market. Where do you think they go? What's right?
Here's where I think a lot of people have gone.
Okay.
And this may, it depends on how big their businesses were and things like that. If they were doing it part-time, they're an influencer. I think that we've lost people to Instacart, Uber, all of those, because they're flexible schedules.
Sure.
I mean, we saw the same thing coming out of all of the manufacturing companies after COVID. People wanted more flexibility. They got to show up at the plant from 6 to 2 every day, and they're not going to. So I don't know where they go, but the postings, I always call it posting and praying, because people don't even respond to job ads anymore. Our recruiting is very, very proactive.
Interesting.
And we have to reach out to people to actually get them interested in a job. And so I think that that's probably going to change more so, I think, from a real estate perspective and a realtor perspective, to understand where did the agents go? Not necessarily where did they go, but where did they leave from, so that you can get market share and be aware of what potential opportunities might open up for you, for people that are no longer doing it.
What's interesting about what you just said is that so there is a migration, an outward migration of the number of agents we're going to, and so as almost a last ditch effort, you hear increasingly of agents who they're retaining the license and they're hoping and praying that the phone's going to start to ring, but until it does, they are doing Instacart. They are doing Uber. They're driving for Uber. They're engaged. They're tending bar. They're waiting tables in hopes that their career as a real estate agent is going to take off. The sad reality is it's probably not, and it's just they've got one foot out the door, and we're just going to see more and more of those people just exiting altogether.
But I also think that there's a big difference between a career versus a job. And I say that in my office all the time. People that work in my office are not there for a job; they're there for a career. Yeah. And I think that's what differentiates you. I mean, you are an expert, and your team is full of experts. So it is your career, not just a job that you do part time. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's different. It's different. How you do it. It is different.
And, sadly and unfortunately, so many of our colleagues, so many real estate agents have just fallen into the business because it seems as if it's going to be easy money. And it was for a while.
Right.
And this is your point from a few minutes ago. Yeah. It's easy money, but then you once the tide changes,
Yeah.
All of a sudden you realize this is really, really difficult. And so those people who just entered because they didn't get a college degree, nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But if they've got an associate, I mean, you and I both sit on the board of MCC.
Yeah.
We love it, and it's such a great institution. But unless you're really preparing yourself for the job market or a career, to use your word, you're probably going to, I'll sell real estate. And it doesn't work out, and you've got no skills to fall back on. And that's why it is that so many are tending bar or doing driving Uber.
Yeah.
Would you say, what's the percentage of career versus just jobs? Just kind of broad. Broadly speaking. I know, it's a big question.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know if I could lend a percentage.
I guess my point was that I wanted to get to is it trending in one direction or the other? Because of what we've been seeing with Uber, with Instacart, there's more of those options out there. If someone wants to do 2 or 3 different things that have flexible schedules, kind of gravitating towards that than the traditional career where you're, in the office 9 to 5 or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I don't even know if I could
I got her.
venture a guess because I think it depends on the industry they're in. It depends on all of that. And I think that people will fall back on something that's more flexible for them. And I think that shifted during COVID. I think family became way more important at that time. The survival, I think we still have a COVID hangover, a little bit of like looking back and realizing like, oh my gosh, my mom used to wash her mail. Things like that happened during COVID, and it's just like, oh my God, like that was the Twilight Zone.
It really was. And we do have, I mean, not only in terms of employment and hiring, but just culturally. I mean, how many people get together? How many people are hosting dinner parties? How many people are hosting cocktail parties? How many people are getting together socially in a way they just, everything. Look at movie cinemas. I mean, other than, what was that, Wicked? That horrible film that I saw a few weeks ago.
I saw your
Did you see it?
No, I saw your Facebook post.
God, I couldn't wait to get that out of there. But anyway, movie cinemas, and so technology is replacing in some ways and supplanting some of that which was very common. But I think there's just an underlying hangover, and I mean the books. I think they're slowly starting to come out. They're a little academic right now, but the books that are going to be written about what has gone on and how COVID changed our lives.
It did.
So irrevocably.
It did. And it changed it for the positive too, because a lot more people are talking about mental health. A lot more people are talking about how are you as a person versus how are you as an employee and a worker. And I think that's going to continue. And I think that's where the 20-somethings are. Those are my daughter's age. They don't wonder what mental health is. They know what mental health is. At that age, mental health wasn't even a word in my dictionary.
Especially young women.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, young men have it, tough enough.
Yeah.
And actually, I think a lot of what plays out with young men is probably more disturbing, but it's hidden.
Yeah.
And it's not as overtly expressed. Is that which is playing out with young women and mental health? It's it's tragic.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, suicidal ideation. I mean, bulimia. Anorexia. All that. Just terrible.
Yeah. But I do think that companies are more aware of that, and I think that the younger folks, whether they're guys or girls, they'll talk about it more openly than they ever did. So I think that's a positive shift. I think counseling and things like that are way more.
It's normalized.
It's totally normalized. Whereas back then it wasn't. Yeah.
Mark, any other questions you have?
No, I mean I could go on all afternoon with Jill, but I think we probably need to. I feel like we're gonna meet a meeting and run off to.
Should I get my baby?
Actually, I was thinking.
Go rescue Duffy.
Do you want to talk about that or no?
So Mark's partner Duffy is currently babysitting my 4-month-old.
I was actually thinking.
What can he do?
I was actually thinking that rather than having Duffy babysit, it would have been great to have had the baby right here.
Just hold him.
Yeah, that would have been kind of.
He probably would have slept.
Hey,
to be honest.
I would have loved it.
I would have loved it.
Yeah. All right. So let's do that next week.
Yeah.
All right?
Okay. Sounds good. We'll get daycare eventually. Permanent daycare eventually.
Eventually. But
Jill, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. It was
super
fun.
insightful. And Mark, have a very, very Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
You're the same, bud.
All right. And you as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again next time.